Good morning. Welcome to Breakfast with Charlie State and Naga Manchetti.
Our headlines today. A ban on travellers to the UK from South America and Portugal has come into force because of fears of a new variant of coronavirus.
Good morning. The UK economy shrank by 2.6% in November as new restrictions took hold. But the shrinking wasn't as bad as many had expected, as firms learned new ways to cope.
Celebrities, including the footballer Marcus Rashford, join campaigners to call for an urgent review of the government's free school meals policy.
Good morning. A century for England's captain. Joe Root leads by example with his ton against Sri Lanka as England build a healthy lead in the first test in Gaul.
Why Bez from the Happy Mondays is launching online exercise classes in his own style. Apparently he piled on some pounds during lockdown.
And you might need those exercises to warm up today. -11 at the moment in parts of North Yorkshire. At least yesterday's snow's gone for now, but there's more to come tonight. I'll have the full forecast here on Breakfast.
Good morning. It's Friday, the 15th of January. Our top story this morning, a ban on travellers from South America coming to the UK has just come into force.
The measure's been introduced because of fears about a new variant of coronavirus that has been identified in Brazil. The ban will also affect Portugal and Cape Verde because of their strong links to the country. Our political correspondent Ian Watson joins us now from Westminster. Ian, morning to you. So we were talking to Grant Shapps, getting some clarity a little earlier from the government, because this came in this morning at 4 o'clock, and then Monday is when other rules or the actual implementation of it comes into effect.
Well, that's right. On Monday, from wherever you're coming from, you're going to need a negative coronavirus test, a high-quality coronavirus test, before you can get access to the UK. But ahead of that, the government has acted because of concerns over the new variant of the virus in Brazil. So that means a flight ban from, it's certainly not for returning UK residents, but for everyone else, from most of South America and also from Portugal, where, of course, people can fly indirectly from Brazil via Lisbon. That's taking place now, but concerns were raised about this variant last weekend. So Grant Shapps, the Transport Secretary, was asked on the programme why it's taken so long.
We had a look at this particular mutation, as opposed to the many other thousands, very carefully, saw that there may be an issue, not so much that the vaccine won't work. In fact, scientists think that it will work, but just the fact that it's more spreadable, as with the version that we've got here, and wanted to act as quickly as possible. As it happens, there haven't been flights coming from Brazil in the last week.
So Grant Shapps saying no flights directly from Brazil in any case, and after the Prime Minister expressed concerns on Wednesday, he announced that there would be a ban on Thursday. So the government maintained they did act quickly there. But there's also another concern which people are worried about. As I was saying, there's going to be tests required for people coming into this country, but also France, which is imposing a 6 p.m. curfew, are now saying that there ought to be the more sophisticated type of coronavirus test for travellers going there, the so-called PCR tests, which take longer to get the results. Now, Grant Shapps was maintaining that hauliers would be exempt from this, that they would get the quicker lateral flow tests. These only take about 30 minutes to get a result, but he was saying that's a system in place for the time being. He also said the French would be in the UK on Monday to see how the system was working, and there's certainly concerns in the road haulage industry that the much more sophisticated, the older test, the PCR test, may be required in the future, and if so, that delays at the ports could grow.
Ian, thanks so much. Ian Watson there for us.
Lockdown restrictions in November pushed the UK economy back into decline.
A key measure of economic growth shows the closure of non-essential shops in England had a big impact on the whole economy.
We can go to Ben now, who's on Oxford Street for us this morning. So, Ben, you've got quite a lot of numbers to give us in a moment, but I suppose in a way, looking at Oxford Street, I mean, it's a sign in itself of very much the damage that's been done to the UK economy.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And the reason we're here is that retail is such a big part of our economy, and it's like hospitality and many other businesses has been forced to close. Only essential retailers can stay open. And what we've had this morning is an update on the economic picture for November. And remember, that was the month when England began its second national lockdown. There were similar restrictions in Scotland and Wales at the same time. And so because those businesses were shut, we learned this morning that the economy shrank by 2.6% in November. Now, it wasn't as bad as many had feared, and it wasn't as bad as the restrictions and the impact of that first lockdown, and that's because these figures tell us that business was more adaptable. It learned how to deal with those restrictions, so it was able to operate in many respects as normal for some businesses, particularly things like manufacturing and construction. And even those service business like hospitality and retail, they were able to offer things like click and collect services or home delivery kits, and that meant that they could produce some economic output despite the lockdown restrictions that were in force. But nonetheless, I think what this does raise is the prospect of a double-dip recession. The idea that we were in recession in the start of last year, then the economy bounced back again. It managed to grow again over the summer as some of those restrictions were eased. But as further restrictions were brought in November and then again at Christmas and now in this third national lockdown, there is a potential for us to be in a double-dip recession. The idea that the economy's tipped back into a recession once again. We've had an update from the Chancellor this morning in a statement responding to these GDP figures, telling us that yes, it is clear that things will get worse before they get better. And so the economy shrinking by 2.6% in November. The economy is still nearly 8.5% smaller than it was before all of this began. And as we heard from the Chancellor this morning, saying things could get worse before they get better. But these figures not as bad as many had feared.
Yeah, got to take some solace from them, haven't we, Ben? Thanks so much. Good to see you.
Now, celebrity chefs, charities and campaigners, including the footballer Marcus Rashford, have called for an urgent review of the 3 school meals policy in the UK.
Now, in a letter to the Prime Minister, they call for a strategy to help end food poverty amongst children. John Donnison has more.
The campaign over free school meals, led by Marcus Rashford, has already forced the government into several changes of direction. Ministers have been accused of coming up with temporary short-term measures to deal with a long-term problem. Now a number of celebrities, including Jamie Oliver and Emma Thompson, have joined the footballer and over 40 charities and educational leaders to write to the government to call for change.
We've signed the letter because the last few months have really shown up the cracks in our school food system, whether it's the use of food parcels or vouchers, or giving people cash during lockdown, or whether indeed to feed children during school holidays. And also, most importantly, making sure that every child who lives in poverty is able to access support.
The letter calls for the government to conduct an urgent, comprehensive review into free school meal policy across the UK and to provide recommendations for the next spending review. This week, Boris Johnson condemned as inadequate a number of meal parcels after images of them were shared on social media. But the government insists it's committed to making sure no child goes hungry as a result of the pandemic.
It's schools' choices how they deliver this support, and the schools have the contracts with their caterers. We've given them the choice between doing a parcel, which has to produce the food for the 5 days for the child, or a local voucher, or a national voucher. On top of that, we've done masses and masses more. We've put in this COVID Winter Support Fund, which is another 170 million that supported children and young people, their families, all through Christmas with parcels and food packages.
Downing Street says the Prime Minister will respond to the letter soon. John Donnison, BBC News.
More than 150,000 fingerprint, DNA and arrest history records have been accidentally deleted from a national police database following a technical issue. The Home Office says the data doesn't relate to convicted or dangerous criminals, but it's thought the error may hinder further investigations. Labour has called for the Home Secretary, Priti Patel, to make a statement.
At least 7 people have been killed by a powerful earthquake which rocked the Indonesian island of Sulawesi. The magnitude 6.2 quake flattened buildings. Rescuers are trying to reach people in the rubble of a collapsed hospital where more than a dozen patients and staff are reported to be trapped.
US President-elect Joe Biden has announced a $1.9 billion spending package to combat coronavirus pandemic and support the struggling American economy. Speaking in Delaware, Mr. Biden called the vaccination program a dismal failure and reiterated his pledge to deliver 100 million jabs in his first 100 days of office. He has also promised an extension of unemployment benefits to millions of Americans.
See the headlines as they happen and watch BBC News live in the app and get the full story with bbc.co.uk/news. Follow the story for all the latest with BBC News.